The first phones ever designed by Google, the Pixel and the Pixel XL, are finally here. And unlike the Nexus devices that came before, which were just Google's guidelines kind of handed off to a manufacturer and told to go make what they wanted with them, these are actually entirely designed by Google and just brought to fruition by HTC. Now, knowing this, two questions immediately arise. One is, what exactly does Google think a phone should be? And then two, do I want what Google thinks a phone should be? So I have here the Pixel XL, the larger and more popular of the two, judging by which models and colors went out of stock the fastest during ordering. Despite the larger size though, there isn't much difference between the two devices. A bigger 5.5-inch screen and a 2.5K resolution on the Pixel XL, and a 5-inch 1080p screen on the Pixel. A larger 3450 mAh battery in the XL, and a 2770 mAh battery in the Pixel. And finally, there is a $120 price difference between the two. Other than those things, a review of the Pixel XL basically covers the Pixel and vice versa. The Pixels both have this honed aluminum body with chamfered edges that actually make them feel great in hand with a good weight and a solid feeling. The top half of the back is covered in this glass that, while unique, was probably put in there to allow for better cell reception and connectivity. The front of the device, however, looks, well, oddly familiar. Two similarly sized bezels at the top and bottom of the screen make it look like another phone, and yes, I have numerous times tried to tap a home button that just doesn't exist. Above that though, we have one of the nicest screens available on an Android phone, with really deep blacks, vibrant colors, and everything just kind of pops. All in all though, the design of the phone isn't anything spectacular, if we're honest, and isn't going to turn any heads, except that the really blue is really frickin' blue. It doesn't feel cheap at all though, and does have that premium hand feel that's a bit harder for me to describe. On the back, there is also a fingerprint sensor at the bottom of the glass portion that I like a lot. If we're honest, a fingerprint sensor on the back of a phone is going to be where your hand is more naturally most of the time than, say, at the bottom of the front. It works super fast, as like on most phones with a fingerprint sensor like this, and the only time it isn't convenient is if it's laying face up on a table. At the bottom of the device, we have what looks deceivingly like stereo speaker grills that are in fact a microphone on the right and a mono speaker on the left. The sound coming out of the one speaker is loud enough though for my taste without getting distorted, as I usually use headphones when listening to music on my phone anyway. Speaking of, there is a headphone jack at the top of the device, which I feel slightly odd having to point out, but it seems that everybody's very polarized on the fact that Apple took theirs away, so there you go, it's there. Now, because this is an Android phone directly from Google, it is running plain vanilla Android, which, if you know me at all, know I always prefer. On top of that, this is the latest version of Android called Nougat, or 7.1, and it brings some minor changes to Android along with it. The app launcher, which is normally an icon you tap in Android, is now a dock of 5 icons that can be swiped up on. Anywhere, by the way, which makes it a larger target for your hand when you're holding it one-handed, which is kind of nice. Swiping up on that does reveal the app drawer. Also, Google now has its search bar replaced with a G icon. You can tap to get to Google Search or swipe over to get to your Google Now and your cards. Aesthetically, icons are now circular, and folders have this look of being peepholes kind of ripped into the background, which I like. And there is now a native multi-window feature that allows you to put 2 apps on the screen at once, which we've seen on other Android devices, just added by the manufacturer instead of how it is baked into Android here. I personally never use this because maybe it's just habit, but for me, I find that it's faster to just tap the multitasking icon and then switch between them that way. One of the most talked about software features on the Pixel phones, and is essentially the reason that Google gave for why they wanted to make their own hardware to go along with their software, is their new AI called Google Assistant. Google Now, Google's voice-assisted software, has been around on Android devices for some time now, and it's hard, at least at this point, to really tell a huge difference between it and the newly christened Google Assistant. There are some easily apparent things. The fact it can be summoned when the screen is off and not plugged in. The speed of it is clearly improved. It's more conversational in its tone, with things like jokes, poems, and a more realistic timbre and tone to the entire thing. Now, the idea being that over time, it will get better with its machine learning and figure things out about you and be able to help you in other ways, but I find that at the moment it's just kind of like a slightly better Google Now. Regardless though, it is definitely on par with Siri, if not a little better than Siri, even as it is right now. So not the biggest issue, it's just not quite the breakthrough feature that I think Google wants it to be just yet. The camera, on the other hand, is a breakthrough feature. The camera on here is fantastic. This is made more apparent by the fact that Nexus cameras haven't always been very good, and when compared to an iPhone at the same time, it just kind of falls behind. Now this camera, on the other hand, has no problem keeping up with the latest iPhone. In daylight photos especially, one could argue that the Pixel camera is actually a little bit better at reproducing colors that are a bit more true to life than, say, an iPhone. Nighttime or low light is still pretty good, but I'd say the iPhone 7 Plus might eke it out in that department some of the time. As for the video camera, the Pixel definitely gets points for its blazing fast autofocus, which is thanks to its phase and laser autofocus sensors on the back of the phone. Now, it doesn't have optical stabilization in which the actual lens is suspended by electromagnets and adjusted based on the device's gyroscope, etc., but instead has an electronic stabilization where the software just tries to keep the image stable. This actually works fine for a lot of scenarios, but the minute things get a bit rougher, it tends to kind of freak out and just jump across the image. Comparing this to the optical stabilization of the iPhone 7 Plus, for example, you can see the differences that I'm talking about. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not gonna be chasing things with my phone trying to film them. And if I was, I would probably use something like a gimbal or some type of mount to keep things stable instead of relying on what's in the phone, regardless of which one I was using. So I'm not sure it's the biggest of deals. The device comes in 32 gigs and 128 gig versions, but does have an interesting feature that other Android phones don't get. The ability to upload all photos and videos from the phone to Google Photos at full resolution without any cost or limit. And since for most people the largest use of their storage is photos or videos, you can actually just tap free up space and it'll remove any of these from the device that you've already backed up to Google Photos, and then you can just still access them from the Google Photos app as long as you have an internet connection. Now, if we're honest though, Google Photos gives you unlimited backup at a high quality and not full resolution, regardless of what phone you have. And that quality, according to their site, is 16 megapixels. This phone has a 12 megapixel camera on it, so that would mean that all of the photos would get backed up automatically anyway at that full resolution. Now, videos, on the other hand, is another story. Google Photos only allows you on the high quality setting to upload videos at 1080p. So if you tried to upload a 4K video, it would get downgraded to 1080p and then get stored for free. With this phone, 4K video will get uploaded at 4K and will get stored at that resolution. So really, if you think about it, the only big benefit here is if you're shooting a lot of 4K video. As far as battery life is concerned, it's good. I'm not sure how people are claiming 2 full days of battery life with these phones, or even a full day, if we're honest. I don't know if they just don't use their phones, or if I'm doing something incredibly wrong, but I've never really had a phone last me a full day. It's very rare. Now, one thing that is nice, though, is that it has properly fast charging. And so plugging it in when it's running low, even for about an hour or so, will give it almost a complete charge. So that's nice. Which finally brings us to the price. Unlike Nexus phones of the past, where they had flagship features and not quite a flagship price, which is why they had such a cult following, this Pixel and Pixel XL have flagship features, but kind of a flagship price to match. The price is $649 for the 32 gig smaller Pixel and $769 for the 32 gig larger Pixel. And that puts it on par with things like the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, which is why I keep comparing certain features like the camera to that phone. Now, I'm well aware that no iPhone user is going to switch to the Pixel. It's just probably not going to happen. So the closest Android phones that we're talking about here are probably like the Galaxy S7 Edge, the LG V20 maybe, and the Moto Z. Now, when you compare it to those other phones, it has arguably a better camera by most comparisons. It's going to get updates from Google every time automatically. All the new features that ever come out, you'll get instantly. And then on top of that, there's the speed. Just doing daily activities on the phone and setting it next to anyone else with those other phones is gonna really show the difference in performance and make them feel like they have, I don't know, last year's model. On top of that, go into the developer options and turn the animations down to half. And then you'll really see how fast an Android phone was meant to be. And there you guys, hope you enjoyed that. If you guys want more photos and videos from other phones as well as the Pixel, click the link below to be taken to my full written review. Also head to that link below or even write down in the comments below this video here on YouTube and let me know what you guys think of the Pixel, of my review. I'm interested. Be nice, be constructive, but go ahead and tell me, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Either way though, if you like this video, please thumbs up it or share it. It is greatly appreciated. And if you want more videos like this, please check out the channel. If you like what you see there, please subscribe. It is also greatly appreciated. And as always, thanks for watching.